IVM. Hello, everybody, and a very happy new year. We're Team Splainer. Welcome to an all-new episode of Press Decode, a weekly podcast where we take Splainer's mission to declutter the news one step further. Check out our newsletter for more stories and follow us at Splainer In to keep up with all the fun things we plan for our Splainer fam. So sit back, relax, and don't let the news give you the blues. I'm Prafula, your host for the day, and today is just me and Vagda. And like always, we have 3 segments for you. In our big story, we're talking about the whole ordeal around the Sully deals and the BullyBuy app and the harassment that Muslim women face online. In our food for thought, we're going to look at everything wrong with Emily in Paris and why we continue to watch it. Finally, we will be roasting and toasting our fave and least fave items. All right, on to our big story. In July last year, a Twitter user discovered and tweeted about a GitHub link. So GitHub is an open source platform for tech developers where anyone can upload and share their software. And this link led to a website that profiled and then sold Muslim women. The website listed about 90 women with their names on display with pictures from their social media profiles. A majority of these profiles were of outspoken women, mostly from India, but also Pakistan. This list included journalists, activists, and researchers. And to make matters worse, there was no police action beyond a few FIRs. The Delhi police claimed that they could not trace the people behind these accounts, apparently because GitHub did not cooperate. Although the website Sully Deals was taken down, it did not stop there. On the 1st of January, several Muslim women, many of whom had already been victims of Sully Deals, found out that yet another app called BullyBuy was auctioning them off the highest bidder. Many of these women have been vocal critics of the government and its policies, and they have been on the receiving end of hateful trolling online for years on end. This time, dear Delhi police approached both GitHub and Twitter for details about the app's developers and IP addresses of all these abusive profiles. The Mumbai police, on the other hand, has already traced and arrested 2 of the people responsible, an 18-year-old Shweta Singh and 21-year-old Vishal Jha. According to the authorities, the 2 have known each other for several years and used 4 separate Twitter accounts to upload pictures of the victims. And here's a point of concern. Jha's account was under the name Khalsa Supremacist and followed several fake accounts such as Justice for Sikh. And the creators of Sully Deals tried something similar where they pretended to expose a Muslim man who they said was behind the website. This kind of targeted harassment has come to light in the last 6 months, but obviously this isn't new. So what do we know about past incidents like this, Vagda?
So yeah, this isn't new at all. It's horrifying, but it's not new. In fact, there's a trend of online sexual abuse against women. Even before July, like in May 2021, for example, right before Eid, a number of Twitter handles with names like Desi Sully Deals and Sully Deals 101 shared photos of well-known Muslim women such as Congress leader Hasiba Amin or journalist Sania Ahmed and sold them in an online auction. And Twitter finally suspended these accounts, but then did little else to crack down on this kind of behavior, which is clearly in violation of their content policies. Also, there was no legal action, and this is obviously totally in violation of the IT Act. Again, after Eid, this Hindutva YouTube channel called Liberal Dogi, with some 87,000 subscribers, asked people to rate images of Muslim women and auctioned them off to each other. And after great social media outrage, the channel was finally taken down, as was the Twitter handle, both of which were owned by a 23-year-old Ritesh Jha. But the thing is that these apps are nothing compared to the many, many fake social media accounts that pretend to be submissive Muslim women or virile Hindu men. And oh my God, when we researched for this story, I never intended to click on one such account, but the content there, it shook me for days.
It's just the grossest things possible.
I couldn't believe it. The kind of content they post, graphic, pornographic content where Muslim women or sex slaves of Kattar Hindu men are shown asking for sex with Hindu men, containing a range of messages presenting Muslim women as objects to be violently raped. And there are so many of these accounts. And one goes off and another one pops up. It doesn't take much to make this kind of an account. But because there is no action, no real action, they keep popping up. And this trend reflects in data too. An Amnesty investigation of online abuse in India found that Muslim women politicians received 94% more ethnic or religious slurs than women from other religions. But the question is, why? Why is online sexual abuse against Muslim women so popular?
This is actually a very worrying aspect of right-wing conditioning. And unfortunately, it didn't even begin with, say, a Twitter or some other social media. Hyper-nationalist and communal sentiments began rising even before independence. And they culminated in things like the Arya Samaj's Shuddhi movement, which encouraged...
Oh my God. We read Shuddhi movement as a good thing in our books.
Really?
Yeah.
This was the first time I came across it. And apparently it encouraged men to recover so-called victims who are mostly women who converted either to Islam or Christianity. And on the flip side, converting a Muslim woman to Hinduism is seen as something heroic, and it speaks to the man's masculine prowess, apparently. And
wow.
So I think years of similar thought processes result in what we see today, threats of sexual assault, morphed images, derogatory terms like Sulli. And this continues, like you said, because there are no consequences. Case in point, the people responsible for Sulli deals went scot-free. And hours before we recorded today's episode, I saw tweets about how Vishal Jha would not be facing any action from his Bangalore college and would be allowed to finish his degree.
Nothing new. Oh my God.
When we were researching this, and I found an Economic and Political Weekly article, which is also in one of our splainers, which from 2019. The article is from 2019. It puts it this way: Hindutva masculinity incorporates ideas of technological progress, military might, and physical strength, all deployed towards the protection and progress of the nation. And the nation here in question is a Hindu nation. And such thinking, the author goes on to say, promotes the use of violence against the other. Basically, the other is anyone who isn't a Hindu man. So obviously, this extends to most women and the entire Muslim community. And apparently, this is a phenomenon called anxious masculinity, which requires...
Oh my God, that's a great term. What a great term. Like, this should be popularized. This is exactly what defines it.
It really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it?
Yep, it does.
So apparently, this requires men to fight for a Hindu nation. And, now all this talk about Hindu Rashtra and Hindu Khatre Mein Hai sort of makes sense, because this is so ingrained in them that they have to protect something. Like, I understand that this doesn't come immediately from like a Twitter thread or whatever. And so they then stereotype Muslim men as virile and dangerous, because this gives them a target against whom they have to protect their nation. And women also receive similar treatment. The only difference is women's bodies are sexualized. And then this sexuality, whether the women know it or not, is used into a weapon, because they think that women can then, or Muslim women can then be used by the other side, quote unquote, to lure them away from, I don't know, their path to whatever. And the other side of this coin also is the fact that so many people are shocked that a woman could be behind all this.
Oh, yeah. There's so much outrage over Shweta Singh, no? How? What the hell? Yeah.
I mean, it's like people have forgotten that the fact that this level of misogyny and hate exists in these circles and is so prevalent that it has radicalized someone as young as 18, right?
Yeah.
And who's to say women on the right are insulated from this and that they don't participate in such behavior themselves?
Yeah. I mean, we know for a fact that women are not. They are affected by it. Both women and men have internalized patriarchy and hate for the Muslim.
Correct.
So it's not shocking at all. In fact, gender has little impact here.
Yeah. And I mean, I get the outrage where they say, oh, how can a woman do this? But women aren't beyond like a certain amount of violence or hate, especially if they're in that sort of circle for years and years, like these people probably are. But on that very depressing note, we come to an end to our first section. We will be right back after a short break. You are listening to Press Decode on the IVM Podcast Network.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market, and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers from across business, media, marketing, and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Hello and welcome back to Press Decode on the IVM Podcasts Network. We're Team Splainer, and make sure you follow us at SplanerIn on Instagram and Twitter to keep up with the Splainer fam. It's time for some food for thought. And today we have a very special guest. 8th grader Malika Chaudhary joins us to discuss our love-hate relationship with Emily in Paris. Hi, Malika.
Hi.
I'm sure you've heard of Emily in Paris, right? I mean, in case you haven't, it's a Netflix show that follows a young American woman played by Lily Collins who travels to Paris for a marketing job. Season 1 came out in 2020 and season 2 landed on Netflix just before Christmas. Mostly, critics really don't like the show, which is described by Vox as a boomer's fantasy of a lazy millennial's life. The New Yorker called it the beginning of the age of ambient TV. And I'm quoting here, "The purpose of Emily in Paris is to provide a sympathetic background for staring at your phone and refreshing your own feeds." And here's how Rotten Tomatoes dubs the second season. Emily in Paris remains a sugary souffle, but it's liable to give a toothache to viewers who are seeking anything deeper than a frivolous romp. So we didn't include Emily in Paris in the list of movies and shows that we recommended in the holiday advisory, the one we carried in the last edition of Splainer of 2021. And the reason is, we're not sure how we feel about it. Do we hate it? Likely, yes. Do we still watch it? Also, yes. At least for me. What about you, Prafula? Want to get cancelled yet?
I mean, I haven't watched it. I don't intend to watch it. But again, more on that later.
Malika, did you watch the show?
Yes.
Did you watch it willingly?
I mean, I really have nothing else to do with my time. I've been sitting at home for the past 3 weeks, so I sadly did watch Emily in Paris very willingly.
Makes sense. So is it ambient TV or just plain sugary souffle? When some people really don't like the show, like some Ukrainians. The second season of the show features a Ukrainian character called Petra, who is seen to be shoplifting and also has poor fashion sense. Petra is also afraid of being deported and, by the way, is played by a Ukrainian actress. So, for representation or diversity or not, I don't know. The culture minister of Ukraine described the caricature image of Petra as insulting and unacceptable. Another Ukrainian resident wrote in an Instagram post, "The way you treated the image of Ukrainians in your second season is such a low-cost trick. It's an absolute scandal and a shame." The post, by the way, has more than 75,000 likes. Other Ukrainians defended the show, like a Ukrainian film producer who said, "So in a TV series, negative characters can be anything but Ukrainian? Obviously, we would like her to be from Moscow, but you don't always get what you want."
Wow.
So what is it? Ambient TV or frivolous romp? Is Ukraine getting a toothache looking for the deep when there is none? Should we be looking for the deep? Malika, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's sort of every character in this show is a character. I mean, in the first season especially, but sort of still the second, every French person is just characterized as rude and hating Emily purely on the basis that she's American.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not enough for a show to last that long, right?
Well, I mean, Friends was on the air for like 20 years, and from from what I
10 years.
10 years.
It feels like 20 years because it's always on top 10.
And from what I can tell, it just seems to be a bunch of people in an inexplicably large apartment.
Mm.
Yeah, I wondered about that too.
Yeah.
About the size of that apartment. If only we were characters in a sitcom, right? Get nice apartments. But yeah, even for me, like I said, I don't ever intend to watch Emily in Paris. And by the way, listeners, Wagda has had a lot to say about it. So that's what I'm basing it on. And that was enough for me. But, you know, the general discussion got me to thinking. I've studied media and I generally lurk on Twitter. So I've seen a lot of debates about what makes a piece of media good or bad. Whether Emily in Paris is good or bad, I'm leaving up to Wagda and Malika entirely. But all these reviews said Emily in Paris is background noise, right? something like Friends or a Parks and Rec that people watch after a long day, it is intended to be an easy watch. But I've noticed that a lot of showrunners seem to hate having their shows labeled that way. Kind of like the new Gossip Girl that was apparently just as hated. I didn't watch that either.
I didn't watch that either.
Did you, Malika?
I mean, I tried watching the original Gossip Girl and I gave up on that after 3 episodes, so I didn't have very high hopes.
Yeah, so I was thinking about all the stereotypes in the show, but what does this have to do with stereotypes? Over the years, I've been thinking a bunch of shows have received backlash for having entire casts who are white or white passing. And until very recently, new shows didn't start diversifying their casts and writers' rooms. And, about time, I'm glad they did. But if your writers don't have a connection or knowledge to any of the cultures that your characters come from, your story ends up relying on old cultural stereotypes. And from what I'm hearing, Emily in Paris seems to rely on them pretty heavily. Even the main character isn't spared because of the stereotype that Americans refuse to learn the language or culture of any country that they're traveling or even living in, right? And yeah, sometimes stereotypes can help further your plot and writing. But in most cases, you end up with weird jokes, one-dimensional characters, and your audience ends up hating you. Talking about characters, Malika, do you have any that you hate? Or are there any lovable characters at all in the show?
Well, I can't think of any that I like. A lot that I hate, but I guess there's some characters that are okay, but almost all of them have done very morally questionable things.
So all their morally questionable actions are the only reasons you don't like them, or are they just straight up annoying also?
I mean, Emily's just annoying. Her wardrobe confuses
Yeah, she is
me.
annoying. I agree.
Oh, on that topic, I was researching and I came across a video essayist called Friendly Space Ninja on YouTube, who I said, and I quote, "Emily in Paris is probably the dumbest TV series I have watched in years." And that's coming from someone who watched all 7 seasons of Pretty Little Liars.
Oh, wow.
I mean, okay, so the YouTuber I'm talking about has 2 pretty great videos dedicated to each season of the show, and we'll link it in the show notes. But that is not at all high praise from someone who reviews stuff for a living, and especially after having seen Pretty Little Liars.
I haven't watched that show.
I watched bits of it, and I get the comparison.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like, you said, should we be looking this deep? It's not that deep, but, and I mean, we know that it's not even made for semi-serious consumption, but, negative stereotypes like the character of Petra in a show that is as far-reaching as Emily in Paris can become very messy very quickly, right? Basically, I'm saying that it is all bad writing and we're all sick of it.
But are we? Are we sick of it? I mean, yes, the show is wildly unpopular. A train wreck, one user on our social media called it. And Malika, I think you'd agree, right?
Yes.
According to Rotten Tomatoes, season 2 of the show had 67% critic score, which I'm surprised is actually pretty high considering how much crap it's gotten. But the audience score is low, 39%.
That's
Only
still
39%.
high. Like,
is it?
I mean, or at least from all the nonsense I've been hearing, that is still pretty high for it.
But still, like, it's so unpopular. Everybody hates it. Despite this, it still remains wildly popular also. At least that's what the numbers show. I mean, 2 days before Christmas, it was second in top 10 in Netflix. It's still there at number 8 right now. And some of it might be because of Malika and me and my sister who like artsy stuff, but there are times we like to binge on frivolous, sugary floof too, And that brings me to what is called the hate watching phenomenon. The activity of watching a show or a movie while simultaneously hating its content or subject. And can you think of some other examples other than Emily in Paris? Anyone?
I mean, Gossip Girl was right there.
Yeah, Gossip Girl.
Gossip Girl was pretty bad, even the original.
Yeah. For me, this is usually like Hindi movies like Welcome, really shitty, but you want to watch it because it's so dumb.
But great meme material.
Now, yes. It's kind of become like a cultural thing now, Welcome has reached that stage. But it also...
What about you, Malika?
Well, I mean, I've watched Ginny Wed Sunny 3 times, so really,
Oh
I
my
don't know where I'm at.
So it's hate watching, but also rewatching.
Oh yes, I forced my friends to watch it with me in the bus.
Yeah, can't suffer alone, can you?
Mm. I think it's something like watching the Kardashians is also similar, isn't it?
Hmm.
And you know what? Sometime last year, what I started watching, which while really hating, was that cooking show with Paris Hilton. I only got to the second episode, but yeah, it's pretty high up there. So why do we watch it? I mean, look at Emily in Paris. The plot is thin and unrealistic. She doesn't have to listen to her bosses to get better at her job, which she is underqualified for, according to herself. And she doesn't have to speak French, and she just survives fine in Paris. She exists, and really handsome and wealthy people just find her and fall in love with her. And here is something that I read in Vox that I really related to, and is exactly why I ended up watching the show. That all this inanity offers comfort from the grief of real world. And it's a dreamland that rewards passive existence. I mean, I want that. I want reward for passive existence. That sounds ideal.
So like a cat.
Yes. Oh my God. I think there are two factors that largely contribute to why we watch it. One, that there is this sense of catharsis, in hating on something that seems unachievable. And the second is the same factor that makes cringe content popular. Do you guys watch any cringe content?
I am notoriously bad at getting like secondhand embarrassment. So I tend to not watch any sort of cringe content unless
What about
it's forced on me.
Malika?
I mean, most of what I watch is cringe content at this point. I watched the movie Holiday.
Oh.
That title, I shouldn't have even watched it.
So you will have some insight on why you watch it. What does it make you feel?
I don't know. It's just nice to hate something. Like when I was in like first grade, I used to watch this kid show called Ninja Hattori. I hated the main character, and every episode I would watch hoping he would die and or fail. It never worked out.
Oh my God.
Malika,
That's
you and I
awesome.
are going to be very good friends.
On that note, we come to the end of this segment. We'll be right back after a short break. You're listening to Press Decode on the IVM Podcasts Network.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to Anil Vishwanathan of Mondelez India. They discuss the beloved Cadbury brand and its campaigns over the years. On Speakeasy, Dheeraj is in conversation with Ranjit Pratap Singh, the CEO and co-founder of Pratilipi. Hey, that's our parent company. They talk about how Ranjit tapped into the need for non-English storytelling content and created a company with over 30 million readers worldwide. On Smarter with Sid, resolved to have better resolutions. Sid tells us how understanding the difference between objectives and outcomes can be liberating. On Tere Mere Raaste, Keshav takes us to Dubai, world of skyscrapers, world-class infrastructure, glittering malls, and massive boulevards. On the Life Manifesto, Zarina goes over the concept of self-abandonment. She explains the do's and don'ts of dealing with it. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do tell a friend. The word of mouth absolutely is essential to us. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you've been listening to. And also, I'd like to ask everybody to check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels going. You can find all of them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Intel. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to Press Decode on the IVM Podcast Network. It's time for our final segment this week, Roast or Toast.
So I am head of positivity at Press Decode. Self-appointed, but yes. Oh, and now with Prafula's approval.
Oh, yes.
So have you guys explored the Google Arts and Culture page? It has a bunch of experiments. There are two that I really like. The Paint with Music and Blob Opera. The first one, Paint with Music, converts the lines you make on a virtual canvas with your cursor into music. And it's a really, really lovely experiment, although the music I made was obviously hideous. But it's fun. It's fun to do. And the second one is Blob Opera, which is a bunch of blobs with eyes and mouths that sing on different scales and pitches as you drag them up and down, left and right. So definitely check them out. And the other experiments on Google Arts and Culture page also. I'll put the link in the show's description.
Before I start mine, let me just say that when we were making the newsletter for the next day and I found the link, I spent like a good 10 minutes just wasting time on Blob Opera. So I highly recommend you check it out. So moving on to mine. And since this is the new year and this is the first episode of the year, I'm changing things up a little. We have a second fave item today.
Woo!
And it's just the kind of absurd that I like. I don't know how you're going to react to this, Vagda. But in our Monday edition, you'll find an article about a writer who attended a 7-hour-long Shrek-themed academic symposium.
Oh, wow.
For those of you who don't know, very much like the Twilight Renaissance, as it's called, where people now suddenly like Twilight, Shrek has a cult fan following. It began apparently with weird memes back in 2007 and went on to include everything from art to fan fiction. And the writer herself apparently participated, but the way she participated was by selling Shrek nudes, which is nudes taken of herself while covered in green body paint. And Vagda just gave me the most wonderful expression, by the way. I just need all our listeners to know. And so the writer also says that she raised...
That wonderful could mean anything, okay?
I mean, I already said I don't know how you're going to react.
No, so I'm a little shocked. That's what I am. I'm not oh my God, full of wonder hearing about Shrek news.
No. Okay, I must clear this up, listeners. Vagda is not full of wonder. She does not. Okay, but the other part of this is that this writer raised thousands of dollars for Planned Parenthood by selling these Shrek nudes.
Oh.
Thousands of dollars. So, yeah.
Okay.
But it was a very weird read, but I still recommend reading it because it's wacky and funny, and also the image of a very serious professor giving a lecture about the phenomenon that is Shrek nudes is delightful. Like,
oh my God, yes. I'm going to check it out.
I couldn't keep a straight face while telling Magda about this right now. So imagine the effort taken then.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. And that was our show this week. Thank you so much for joining us on Press Decode. You can catch us every Thursday on the IVM Podcast Network. And guys, please remember, don't let the news give you the blues.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.
Eventually, you'll see the end of your childhood.
Get accustomed to womanhood.
Enjoy the experience of sisterhood.
Might get to wifehood.
Or not. Choose motherhood.
Or not. You'll learn to define your personhood.
Earn a livelihood.
Change the neighborhood.
And get rid of the falsehood that life post-academia is easy.
So join me, Ritasha.
And me, Ayushi.
On a journey from station starting point.
To station, what now?
Next station, Pudin station. And hopefully, Agla station, adulthood.
Fresh episodes out every Thursday.